But anyway, I'm John, he's Jack, and let's get into it, because this is going to be a beefy show, I think. We'll try to keep it under 2 hours. I'm John, he's Jack. This is Set the Table, episode 15, and we're going to do a deep dive on 7th Sea.
How's it going, eh?
It's good. It's good. Well, it's mostly good. I've had some folks.
Mostly good.
I've had some folks canceling day of session, saying that they've made plans. So we didn't play our main game last week or this week. We took a miss last week, and we played the alt game this week, the one that Thornton is running, who came on as a guest in episode 10.
Yes. Yep.
My paladin Osric, who I talked about in episode 8 or 9 when we did alignment, he got killed, kind of on purpose, but it took Thornton quite a bit to bring him down, and I was able to bring in Jethis, who was inspired by a comment you made on the show, actually. You had said if you want to mess with John, you put snakes in your adventure, and so now I'm playing a pure blood Yuan Ti sorcerer. So take that.
So how is that going for you? Is that character hard to play? And what alignment did you pick? I'm curious about that.
So Jethis is neutral evil. I talked with Thornton a little bit because we hung out the other day, and I was talking about this character. So his intro was him coming through a portal, followed by a guard who was trying to kill him. And so he is the rightful noble serpent lord of wherever he's from. I wrote it down, but I don't have it in front of me. And he is on the younger, less experienced side and doesn't have a lot of power or friends yet. So his parents were deposed when their rule came to an end. Instead of him coming to power, he got somebody else did, and he got pushed out, and is now being treated as an outcast and a traitor. And so I was fleeing the coronation ceremony after the new king announced that I should be killed, and the portal appeared in front of me, and I ran through it and found myself in the dungeon. As for the ease of the character to play, I only got to play him for maybe the last 20-25 minutes of a 3-hour session, so I haven't had a lot of business to do with him yet. But he is neutral evil. He does hiss his S's and behaves like a snake, which is a little uncomfortable for me, but it's fun. I think that it is a good idea. It's like fantasy exposure, which is decent.
Nice. That sounds great.
He's also super fun because I don't usually play hard casters. Like Wizard, Sorcerer, Warlock are like the three that I would be most unlikely to play. So I was throwing some Chaos Bolts around, and it was a lot of fun.
So that's fabulous.
Are you still playing Mondays?
I am taking a break on Mondays because of some travel things that I have to do for my day job. So
yeah,
I'm on a little bit of a hiatus on Monday. I didn't check in with the group just because I felt a little guilty that I had to cancel 2 weeks in a row. But I'm sure that my party is taking care of Delrea. Delrea Gem Counter, of course, is kind of the de facto leader for the party. And hopefully she's still doing well. She had some singing engagements, traditional bard type stuff. So my hope is that she's well, and in not this Monday, but coming Monday, but the Monday after, second Monday of July, I'll be able to reconnect and see where she is and what she's up to, and what has transpired within the group.
Cool. We did play 7th Sea, of course.
We've played a bunch of 7th Sea, haven't we?
Yeah, I don't know. We're on session. Is it 4 or 5?
We're on session 4. We had
4.
if
Okay.
if you start counting from 0, we're on session 4.
Yep. You do. You hear that, everyone? You start counting from session 0, unless you don't have a session 0, but you probably should.
Well, it depends on the system, right?
No, every system should have a session 0.
Really? Huh. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if I would call the funnel and DCC a session 0.
Um. Okay. Valid. Valid. I think you have a portion of whatever system. So sometimes you have a dedicated full session 0, and sometimes you have a 10-minute session 0 at the beginning of the night, just to establish, your hard boundaries and the limits at the table, and
Yeah, no,
to
no. Yep.
talk about
I
rules. And
I would agree with that.
yeah, I think I use
All right.
session 0 just to describe what you talk about during it. So
Yeah.
yes, every session starts at, time 0.
Right.
So yeah, so we're on session 4. My brother Matt got to join us, and we sailed from Puerto del Sur to Laurencia to find that Captain Toblerone was engaged to the awful woman Donatilla. And I honestly, that's the only way that I'm going to be able to remember his name now. So
Well, that's because that's a nickname his crew gives him because he's such a
Tofani.
softy. Right. Tefani is his real name.
But yeah, but it
Uh
always takes me a minute. So
Torrone, actually, it's not even Toblerone, it's Torrone, which is an traditional Italian wedding candy.
oh,
Um,
nice.
so during the wedding, we're going to see lots of candy puns and references. If you guys let the wedding happen,
Yeah, I was gonna say if we get to a wedding.
I was sure you were going to bust up this engagement and ruin Donatilla's scheme once and for all, but you did not.
No,
Um,
we've got a little bit more tact and honor than that.
you had plenty of raises to tactfully cause the thing to go wrong. But
I
we'll talk
mean,
about that
yeah,
more
we
when we
kind of
get into
did.
the deep dive, right?
Yeah. We did cause a little bit of trouble. I guess it was less than we thought, but um, I don't know. And then we went to speak to the maestro with Rosa in private. We haven't talked a whole lot about the story for this. I don't know if you want to take the intro story that we got and put that up somewhere. You're waiting to
I,
publish it, so you probably want to keep it.
I'm gonna keep that close hold for now. But if I don't get positive confirmation from the Explorers League when I go to publish this, then it'll be available at Red Hoodie Games. Absolutely.
Nice. So yeah, let's go ahead. There's a whole episode about Seventh Sea. We try to keep it system agnostic, but this is it. Um, I
No, we every so often though, right? We do a deep dive because we keep talking about all of these systems, like, oh, 5e does this, and Pathfinder does this, and Alien does this, and 7th Sea does this. Um, so it's nice to kind of take a break from kind of generic, like, hey, improv and NPCs and character death, and just dive deep into a system so that the listeners, if you're listening and you're like, yeah, 5e, I like it, but it's mathy and I feel like an accountant. I'm looking for something different. Um, Seventh Sea is your jam, my friend.
I don't know that people do that as much as we might think. To run an adventure in 5e in Renaissance Italy and asked for tips or rules or suggestions about how to integrate dueling into, both the story and how to handle it mechanically so it's not super boring to watch two people 1v1 in D&D. And I commented and said, have you considered running with 7th Sea? Because they have maps for all of that and with a fantasy theme to it and rules for ships and dueling, and it would be excellent. And he was like, "No, I'm really trying to stick with 5e." And I didn't comment any further, but I wondered why not 7th Sea. So it's my hope by the end of the episode that we have covered why 7th Sea.
Why 7th Sea? Sure.
Yeah.
And to be fair, right, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea,
Well,
right?
no, but you got
If
to give it a chance.
no, but if and I can see where and we talked about the player types, but I can see where a tactician would be really frustrated in Seventh Sea.
Yes, that's actually it's one of my comments later on.
Oh, okay. Very
Um,
well.
yeah. So we'll let's break down what 7C is. Um, it is a role-playing game system by Chaosium that is.
Sure. So I can kind of run through the history here.
Yeah, please.
So Seventh Sea was originally published by AEG back at the turn of the millennia, so 1999 2000.
What?
Um, by this first edition. First edition
Oh, okay.
came out in 2000. It was written by John Wick, not the movie shoot 'em up guy, you killed my dog, blah blah blah. But there's actually a very famous game designer named John Wick. He's a fabulous guy. You'll see him at Origins or Gen Con if you go to the cons. He's got an awesome beard. He's super friendly. He's wicked approachable. Like you walk up to him and you're like, "You're John Wick," and he goes, "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" And I was like, "Oh my god, this guy's amazing." So if you ever get a chance to meet Mr. Wick, he is awesome. To chat with. So he for Alderac AEG, that's the Alderac Entertainment Group. You probably know them better for some of their board games.
Hmm.
Um, Istanbul. I think they did. I want to say they did Smash Up, but I could be wrong.
No, I
Dark
think you're right about that.
Seas. I see Dark Seas on the shelf has an AEG logo, but people think you say AEG and people think the ridiculously large bags at game conventions
Yep.
and board games
That's what I think of.
but back in the late 90s, early 2000s, AEG also published role play games. So first edition, there's a tremendous amount of material on Drive Through RPG for first edition 7th Sea.
What are we playing?
We are playing second edition
All right.
7th Sea and second edition 7. So 7th Sea came and went, right? And then John and his team put together a Seventh Sea Second Edition Kickstarter, and that hit Kickstarter. And I'm trying to look through my notes here to see if I can find the Kickstarter information. I might have to go to a different website, but
I mean,
basically,
that's all right.
it's this. So it is the second. It's the second edition of Seventh Sea. They tightened up some of the rules, and they put it into a new format, right? The multi. So the in 2000, those books were coming out black and white with black and white pen illustrations. The second edition Seventh Sea art is to die for. It's beautiful. Every book is beautiful. It's fabulous. Um, and it was also a very successful Kickstarter. They made a tremendous amount of money. Uh, at the time, the second edition Seventh Sea Kickstarter was one of the highest funded role play game Kickstarters for its day. And I'm gonna get the date wrong if I don't look it up really quickly.
Hmm.
Yeah, $1.3 million.
Dang.
Um, yeah, $1.3 million. And when did it? So, and it you I went in. I got the core rulebook in print. I got everything else in PDF because, of course, I read the description of a Seventh Sea, and I said, "Well, this game, it's we should talk about theme, right? We've started even with history, and we haven't even really said what is Seventh Sea.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the
So
genre? I would call it
it's
historical fantasy.
I think it is historical fantasy. I think
Or maybe
you're
historical fiction. No, because there's definitely fantasy
I
elements.
I almost want to say that it is historical, cinematic historical fantasy because in our game that we're playing, I really have kind of tamped down the elder race. So there are these artifacts and runes that you can investigate that have technology. It's technology that's well beyond the ken of mankind on Thea. but it is still it looks like magical devices, but this is basically technology, transporters and phasers and other weird contraptions.
Oh, all right. Then
Um,
yes, yeah. Low historical fantasy. 'Cause
Low historical
there's no
fantasy.
there's no fireballs.
There is magic, but it takes kind of a backseat to the swashbuckling, sailing, pirating
Yeah. I mean there's
modality.
about as much magic in it as Pirates of the Caribbean. And
Yeah,
like there's
absolutely.
like the putting a black spot on
So as
um
so if you wanted like comparisons to other media, Pirates of the Caribbean is a fabulous comparison. Um,
yep.
Princess Bride is another like if you like the Princess Bride, that's kind of the style, the swashbuckling and that kind of stuff.
We keep
Uh,
talking about that because it's my favorite movie and that was how Jack got me into 7th Sea. So,
yeah. Uh, the writings of Alexander Dumas, The Man in the
mm,
Iron Mask, the
Three
Three
Musketeers.
Musketeers, the Scarlet Pimpernel. I'm trying to think of other. There's more piratey stuff. So
I
um,
really like Brian Jacques's series with the Flying Dutchman.
yeah,
That's a good
yeah.
one.
What did you say the other night that was really good? You said it's Princess Bride meets Assassin's Creed,
Yes. Yep.
and that's also a really apt explanation of the genre. The world. So we've kind of covered the history, right? There's two editions: first edition, second edition. We're going to talk about second edition. Um, After the very successful Kickstarter, uh, the Seventh Sea universe ran into some troubles. I'm not really sure about the. It's more. I think it's more business and author and artist troubles. Again, it wasn't very public. I didn't really follow it publicly. I'm not. I like to follow game designers when they're designing games and stuff, and I like to support people when they're having trouble. But I don't like to like rumor monger and gossip and that kind of stuff. So
Right.
uh, something happened at John Wick Enterprises, and John transferred the licenses to Chaosium. And Chaosium is best known for Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest. So Seventh Sea lives on as a line of underneath the Chaosium brand. The quality of the books haven't changed. The game itself is still as awesome as ever. If you cannot tell by now, I'm a fan. I think as far as I'll just lay that out there. As far as role play games go, and I've played many games. Seventh Sea Second Edition is in my top three. It's
Wow.
probably number one.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It would be wicked cool to play an Assassin's Creed 2 style game in 7th because you could totally do with hide and weapons and athletics and oh, it'd be good.
It would be good. It would be good.
Um, so the primary die mechanic for 7th Sea is a D10.
It is.
Um, I don't know if
It's
you've got
it
a
is
name
a
for it.
so it is a you build a dice pool. So it's a D10 dice pool with a roll and keep mechanic. That's the technical term, right?
All
Right.
right.
So your character sheet has your standard, you have skills just like in 5e, your Pathfinder, right? Aim, weaponry, hide, empathy, perform, your standard set of heroic action type things. And then, of course, you have your standard set of attributes, brawn,
Finesse,
finesse,
resolve, wits,
resolve,
panache.
wits. Yes, and
I
and
know
those
those. I've got those
those
down.
are those are allegories to strength, dexterity, constitution. Wits is a an amalgam of wisdom and intelligence, and then panache is your charisma. So what you do, you put in pips, kind of like Vampire the Masquerade or Werewolf, right? You color in pips on the character sheet,
Like
and you'll have
proficiency pips in 5e.
sure, and so you will when you take a risk. doing something in 7th C that requires dice is called a risk. When you take a risk, you'll build a dice pool. So I'm going to sneak into town and try to locate someone who will sell me food to my pirate. We our ship's been out sailing around pirating. The town's really pissed at us for good reason because we've been pirating, and we want to sneak into town and buy some food. It's like, okay, cool. How about some finesse? Because that's dexterity, right? Jump. I'm gonna Assassin's Creed this baby, right? Parkour. I'm gonna jump from rooftop to railing to rooftop, and then I'm gonna look for someone who can help me. So that's finesse and notice. You take all the dice. You for every pip in finesse and every pip you've got colored in notice, you put together your dice pool and you roll it. You use the dice to make tens, right? So if you get a 7 and a 3, that's a 10. If you roll a 10, that's a 10.
It doesn't have to be a 7, and it doesn't have to be exactly 10
it,
either, right? If you
it,
roll
it
3d10 and your total is 26, you've got 2.
right, but if your total, if it's you have to use whole dice, right?
Yes.
So you can't say, well, an 8, and I've got an 8, an 8, and a 4. I've got 2 raises. It's like, no, sorry, my friend. You've got a 12, which is 1 raise, and an 8, which is not a raise.
Oh, we haven't been doing that.
We, I've kind of been doing that. I've been watching I haven't been doing
Oh,
it carefully, but I've been watching your rolls and making sure that people aren't cheating.
I totally have not been. We've just been rolling in the Roll20 die
It,
roller and looking at the total.
yep, and that's cool. You've been looking at the total. I've been looking at the dice value.
Nice. Well done.
Yep. It's one of those things that I don't want to pester players with that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
right? And if we had to have that discussion, it's like, no, I have 3 raises. It's like, no, I'm afraid you only have 2 because you've got an 8, a 4, and a 10. So you've got 2. So yeah, no, I've been kind of keeping an eye on that, but it's again, I don't want to slow the game down, and I think so. That's the core mechanic, right? Roll and keep. It's a roll and keep mechanic. You build a dice pool based on your stats, and then you roll to make risks.
Yep.
Okay. What else is different? What struck you as the most different between 7th C and 5E?
Um, there is, at least from a player perspective, there is significantly less crunch, which we say here to indicate, numbers, um, and part of that means that there is less certainty in your actions. So this is sort of my one mixed feeling about it, because other stuff I love and other stuff I don't like, but this is the one that's like very on the fence. Is that rolls aren't static. So in 5e you've got, an attack of 16 will hit, and you roll 1d8 plus 2 slashing damage. In 7C, it's, well, I want to stab this guy and knock him out, but not kill him, right? I want to knock him unconscious, just leave him wounded on the floor. I don't, I can guess that sounds like 1 raise. Maybe it's not a
So
raise.
so if it's a brute and yeah, so if it's a brute in a brute squad, that's 1 raise,
Right.
right?
So,
And
but I
and that's
didn't know that ahead of time, so it makes
ah,
it harder for me to plan out
gotcha.
what to do necessarily.
So
Um,
so in the core rule book, so what John is talking about is how the game is actually played. So in 7th C, the the way you play the game is a little bit more like Fiasco, or I think you talked about one with the candles, right?
10
Ten
candles.
candles, right? It is more of a collaborative storytelling game as opposed to a Pathfinder Starfinder 5e where here's our adventure path. We're supposed to talk to this guy. we got to convince him to do this thing, right? And
It is
like
like that. It's just how you go about it is different.
is different, right? So there is a story with a plot in 7th Sea. It's a shared storytelling mechanic where if you're taking a risk, like John was saying, it's not okay. You need to convince this guy to sell you. You've
It is, right? If I want to knock the guy out of the fight and stab him, I still have to roll dice to find out if I succeed or not. The only
sure,
difference is that in 5e you have a number and it's like, "Oh, okay, so if a 14 doesn't hit but a 15 does."
right,
And I know how much damage I deal, and that's your core gameplay loop. Your core
right.
gameplay loop in 7C is sort of narrating a scene like I would have described it before as like a scene from a movie,
Right.
and then hoping that you have enough raises for that to be okay.
And we can 7th Sea, you can play it where this is I want to do this, right? And John Wick, if you watch some of the videos of John Wick GMing 7th Sea, that's one of the things he tells his players all the time. Don't tell me don't ask me if you can do something. Tell me how you want to do something. So you could say, I want to do this. I'm going to fight these bandits and I want to leave one conscious but disarmed so I can interrogate him. And it's like, okay, cool. What's your approach? We haven't defined the word approach yet, but as a GM, I ask the players, what's your approach? And you look at your character sheet and you look at your skills and you think about the scene, right? From very cinematic, like a movie, right? I've got my rapier out and there's these three bandits, and right, I'm going to disarm one with some fancy sword play. It's like, okay, so that's weaponry and finesse. And by disarming that one, that's going to scare the other two off. They're going to run away uh, because they realize that I'll just cut them to ribbons if they fight me. And this guy is going to be, hey, that's my sword, and he's going to grab his hand, like the people do in the movies, and rub it and go, hey, you didn't have to do that. It's like, okay, cool. Your approach is finesse and weaponry. Let's say to make this go off, right? And this is where you negotiate with the GM, right? To make this go off, that's 4 raises, right? These are pretty professional, seasoned bandits. It's going to take a lot of fancy swordplay to scare them off. Maybe they're just bums, and 1 raise would scare them because they're already drunk and they're really not sure what's going on, and nobody wants to get run through with a sword.
Right.
So that's kind of, you have to set the scene as the GM. You set the scene, and that's one of the things I found very challenging when I started playing the 7th Sea. Was I was right. You guys know from the module episode, I love modules. Right, here's the room description. Here's the map. This is the monster that's there. Here's the secret door. Behind that secret door is this treasure chest. Blah 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 blah. And in 7th Sea, it's like, no, you set a scene almost like a movie, and then the players are in the scene and they have to determine how to react. So as a GM, I think that was the biggest hurdle for me to get over. And then once I kind of realized I'm going to set the scene, describe what's going on. If the party flounders a little bit, I usually give kind of possible outcomes that guides them along the plot, kind of like what we did last night
Mm-hmm.
with the party, and then we move on. But that's
Yeah, that was the most different part, was going from the I know what I am doing with what I have, and to having it be sort of a not a negotiation, but like I would like to do this,
yeah, no,
and waiting to find out if you can.
and it totally is a negotiation at some point, because I, as the GM, I have a story, right, that I'm trying to guide you guys through, like a movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and there's going to be things that you do that advance the plot, and then there are going to be things that you do that they're cool and they're good. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do this in your 7th Sea games, Um, but they advance an individual story plot. They focus on an NPC. They do something a little bit um, it's and you see that in movies all the time, right? There's the, oh yeah, hey, that character's kind of cool. Um, Pirates of the Caribbean, there are those two guards in the first movie, right? This dock is off limits to civilian. Oh, hey, thanks, mate, for telling me. If I see more, if I see an, I shall inform them, right? And and they come on, they come off. We don't see them again until the second movie. I think we see them again, and then by the third movie, they're pirates, right? They've given up being in part of the Royal Navy, and now they're on the pirate side. Um, it's fun. It adds a little flavor to the movie, but you don't focus on those guys. And sometimes in Seventh Sea, your party did that. I think in session 3, you focused on kind of one of those bit players. It was fun. We had a good time. You got a nice sail up to Mondavi for it, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
No, I mean it was good.
so what haven't we covered? So we covered the theme.
What's Yeah,
Go.
what's the canon? Are we playing in a canonical world or is
So
this
so the
a homebrew world?
we are playing in a canonical world. So the world of Seventh Sea happens in a continent called Thea, which is roughly analogous to Europe of the 16th and 17th century. So Vodacce is a country. It's like Italy. There's a country called Castile that's like Spain. There's a country called Montaigne. They have musketeers, so they're France. And then Avalon is run by the Queen, which is England. The Highland Marshes are Scotland. Westenmeyer are the Scandinavian countries, right? They don't split them out. It's just one big Scandinavian country.
Hmm.
There's Germany is Essen. Ursar is Russia. The Samaritan. There's kind of a um, Hungary, Austria, Poland group that's a little bit more democratized. They've got kind of a democracy republic thing going on. Um, the Crescent Empire is kind of the Middle East. There's the New World, which is South America. The colonies. That's the book I'm looking forward to next. Um, that is the eastern seaboard of the uh, what would become the United States, but that's more of the Caribbean and the colonies. But so there's this really expansive world. There's also an Asian source book. That one I don't have. That's Cathay, and that's Japan, Korea, Vietnam, China, and allows you to kind of play in a more feudal Asian style with ninjas and samurai.
Cool.
Um, so that's kind of, and the books, again, the Seventh Sea library is very extensive. John and his team have done a fabulous job of building an immersive world. I think the only other product or world that I have seen that is probably better than Seventh Sea would be Greg Stafford's Glorantha. The Glorantha omnibus from Chaosium, right? That's I think it weighs in at almost 17 pounds.
Sheesh.
Uh,
That's a
and
textbook.
it's two, actually, it's two textbooks that talk about everything Glorantha. With Seventh Sea, there is a 2 volume set for the nations of Thea, the primary nations, Vodacce, Ursaring, Vestenmeyer, yada yada. I just went through them all.
Hmm.
There is an entire splat book on the pirate nations, so Brotherhood of the Coast and all the pirate uh, people that you can encounter. There's a book on the Crescent Empire, so all of the countries that represent kind of the Middle East. There's a book on the New World, so Mayans, Aztecs, Incas, and like I said, the book on the colonies, the Caribbean, and kind of the Eastern Seaboard. I'm very much looking forward to getting my hands on that. But these are not 64 page modules. We're talking about 200 and 300 page hardcover, um, full color works of art. They're just fabulous.
So what's the appeal? Why do you like 7C so much? What's the
Seventh
deal?
Sea gives me everything I love about role playing. So making up a character, building a story for that character. We haven't talked about character creation. We'll get to that. But it's all the great parts of role playing for me, the method actor, uh, and none of the accounting and none of the roadblocks. We talked in a previous episode about fudging rolls. You don't need to fudge rolls in Seventh Sea. Um, if
Because every risk is a fudge.
every risk is advancing the story, right? There isn't like oh, here I am, you're in room 2C, and to get to room 2D, you've got to discover the secret door. Roll investigation. Oh, look, I rolled a 7. Well, sucks to be you. You don't find the door. Well,
Right, but I could roll
you know,
one raise and not find the door.
yeah, but if you rolled one raise, you may not find the door, but you may find something that indicates there is a door in the room,
All right.
right?
Right. I
You,
mean, you
you,
could do that with both.
well, I don't know. In 5e, if I roll under the DC for the perception roll, I don't perceive the door. Like it's binary. At least for me, it feels binary. Either I find the door or I don't find the door. In
All right.
7C, if you need 3 raises to find this very well hidden door, you get 1 raise. It's like, well, you know, the tapestry on the wall has a really weird wear pattern. It looks like people brush by the tapestry and it's way over there away from the walkway,
Hmm. All right.
right? So then you're like, oh, okay, well, I don't know that there's a door here, but I know that people are moving in and out of here, but I don't know why. So then as a player, you can say, well, okay, fine. Now I'm gonna let's do another risk. I'm gonna hide behind the tapestry and see what happens. Or I'm going to use my tempt and try to schmooze information out of the serving staff to see, hey, why is this one tapestry always like, why is that? That's the only one that's worn on the corner like that funny. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's why there's no encumbrance. There's no inventory.
Although
Uh,
we've created them because there are things to keep track of.
there are, yeah, but it's
Every
not
item is a key item. It's not like you're keeping track of rations and bolts
right.
and
If you find something that the GM takes time to say, hey, you found an emerald ring. We found a silver banded emerald ring last night.
Mhm.
That one, that's important,
All right.
right? And maybe it's not important. Maybe it's a MacGuffin, but um, it's the thing that you write down. But like your weapons, your clothes, your shoes, no. I'm not. And I've played in D&D games, more advanced Dungeons and Dragons than future versions, where I mean, we were measuring encumbrance down to the pound, right? And
Yeah.
and well, you've got 2 swords. How are you carrying those? Well, okay, I'm going to have one strapped to my belt, and the other one I'm going to put strapped to my donkey because I have to have a donkey to carry everything because right, 100 gold weighs 20 pounds, and if I have 100 gold in my pockets, right, I'm at half movement speed. Hooray! Right, and I'm not saying that that's not fun sometimes to play the tactical. How much can you carry? Let's give the party interesting choices. Right, you're fleeing. How much gold are you going to carry? Or I'm going to throw away my food and carry more gold because I'm just running to the ship and there's food on the ship, kind of thing. But with 7th Sea, there's none of that, and I know that was tripping you guys up. It tripped Matt up last night because he's like, "Well, what's my weapon?" It's like, "Well, whatever. Like, you have a sword. You have 3 dots
Right.
in weaponry. You have a sword. Well, I have 2 dots in aim. Great, you have a pistol. Well, how much does that cost? Who cares? Like,
Yeah, that stuff's just not it. Yeah, it really doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. And when you look at movies, right, like The Princess Bride, when you look at The Princess Bride, Wesley's got his sword, right?
Hmm.
And um, and Indigo Montoya has his father's sword, right? And that's a perfect illustration, right? Indigo Montoya actually has the advantage signature item. He is carrying around his father's sword. That's an important thing that's probably marked down on his character sheet.
Sure.
Wesley has a sword, and we don't care where he got his sword. Nobody cares where Wesley got his sword or what it is, or it's a sword, right?
Hmm.
When after the wedding, Buttercup finds a dagger in her room. She's like, I'm gonna kill myself because I'm married and this sucks. I'm gonna find a dagger, and I think we were having this conversation. It's like you're in a tavern, you're in a tavern. Like there are knives and forks, and if you want to throw a knife at somebody, there's probably darts, right? There's probably a dartboard somewhere. Pick up a dart and huck it. Like
Yeah.
there, there. We don't have to have this kind of well. Go to the
The
player's handbook,
minutia.
right? The minutia, and I think that's one of the things I love about 7th Sea is that the minutia melts away, and you get to focus on the story and the scening and the way that it's framed. You can move quickly, right, from story to story, from important point to important point, and that's I saw that everybody's seen this meme, right? Dungeons and Dragons is the only game where a 3 week walk takes 5 minutes and a 5 minute fight takes 3 weeks worth of sessions,
Right.
right? And we don't do that in 7th Sea, right? We set the scene. Your character decides their approach, what they're going to do in how they're going to approach what's happening before them. They roll their raises and then they spend their raises. Same thing with combat, right? Combat works the exact same way.
Except
Um,
for duels, which we haven't gotten to do.
I was trying to set you up for a duel last night, and you just wouldn't take the bait.
No, it's all right.
Um, it's okay.
I'm
It's
too
coming.
polite.
I'm sure that duel is coming. One way or another, we'll get there.
Hmm.
Um, but with combat, not dueling. Dueling is special between two because again, that's a when you think about a cinematic approach, right? And I'm going to keep using Princess Bride um, examples because the book uses them. Um, think about Indigo Montoya. He's in the castle. He's got Count Ruthen, right? And Count Ruthen's got what, 4 or 5 nameless guards. Uh, and he's like, kill the big, kill the Spaniard, leave the big one for questioning. And
Well,
Indigo
the opposite of
Montoya,
that, but
oh, whatever. Yeah, I got the quote backwards. But then what does Indigo Montoya do? He spends 5 raises and cuts down all of the nameless guards, right?
hmm.
Um, and in D&D that would have been okay, roll initiative. Okay, guard one swings, he misses. You swing at guard one, you hit. Roll for damage. Okay, cool. You do a little bit of damage to guard one. Guard two swings and hits you. Oh, he doesn't do much, right? And you're doing this wash, rinse, and repeat. It's not terrible, right? I make it.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
I'm
definitely like
I'm
not
being
illuminating the scenario.
right, but in 7th Sea, that's a quick like, hey, faceless,
It's
faceless, and
it's
they're
one
called
set of rolls instead of 12.
12, right?
Yeah,
And
which
it
is nice.
determines the outcome,
It's
right?
it's like you said, it helps to speed the narrative along.
Which is the
Um,
important part in 7th Sea. It isn't the hey, I and again, this kind of goes back to we haven't talked really about character generation and growth, but in D&D it's important, right, to keep track of I killed 3 goblins and John, you killed 2 goblins and Callie, You healed us while we killed goblins, so here's how we're going to split up the experience points, right?
Right.
So it's important to keep track of all that stuff because you want to make sure you get credit for your actions. With Seventh Sea, the character generation process ends with you picking a personal story. So you build your character, and it's a points based system, right? There's no randomness involved. You get to pick everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you pick what
Well,
you nation you're from, and that gives you some benefits. You pick your backgrounds, which are jobs or things that have happened to you in your past or educational opportunities that you've had, and you have a budget of points to spend. And then at the end, two really cool things happen. At the very end, I, the penultimate, not the very end, but right before the very end, you get a hubris and a virtue. Your virtue is a power that you can activate that will get you out of a scrape. It is, and John Wick has said this himself. It's a game breaking power. You're in the middle of a scene and you need to do something super heroic, right? You need to, whatever it is, that virtue, you can spend your hero points, and hero points are a currency that heroes get,
mm-hmm.
to throw that virtue and say, nope, I'm doing this. Your hubris is kind of your Achilles heel. It's your flaw. It's your weakness. And if your hubris gets activated, you get hero points. You know the you there's a penalty, right?
Yeah, you do something
Um,
selfish,
you do something selfish, you get
or you.
confused. It can derail the scene. So
Yeah.
you've got this hubris that can derail the scene. Like if you're greedy and the villain says, "Well, you could take me to the constable and have me arrested for for burning down the widow's farm, or I can give you this sack of gold." It's like, "Oh, crap, that's going to activate my hubris." Boom, hubris.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll take the sack of gold. All right, here's a hero point. You've taken the sack of gold, and now you're working for the villain. It's like, gosh, I got to fix this. This isn't right.
Whoops.
Like, whoops. So that
Your
there's that,
party will remember that.
and the way you get those, there's a deck of cards. They're like tarot cards,
Mm-hmm.
and you deal out the cards. The I think the cards are a 9.99 extra that you can buy to go along with your rules. You can use regular tarot cards. You can also use dice
And you can
to
also just
randomize
pick
that,
them.
and you can pick them. Although it's more mystical if you use the cards. It's more fun, right? It gets you kind of into the theme a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like
then
fortune telling.
the last thing you do is you pick a story. You pick a goal. So you've just gone through character creation, and it happens to everybody, especially with a points budget by character generation system. Uh, gosh, I wanted that, right? I wanted whatever that was. I wanted sea legs, right? I wanted to be really good at
I
sailing.
wanted dynamic approach because I
You
didn't
wanted
realize how good it was.
dynamic approach, which is, I think, a 3 point advantage. You may want a family heirloom. Like I want an heirloom item. I want a signature item. I want to be, you know, I'm a courtesan and I want this fan that I can use. You know, it's got sharpened blades on the end and it's very pretty
Oh,
and
that's so
dainty.
cool.
But I can use it as a weapon, a slashing weapon. I want that. It's like, okay, cool. You know,
Man, we gotta tell Callie about that.
you couldn't afford that before, but if you want that, we'll build you a story to get it, right? And that's how you do character progression in 7C is every character has a personal story that they're trying to accomplish. The number of steps in the story, the more steps you have, the bigger reward at the end,
So
right?
this is the equivalent in 5e to like my players talking to me about the magical quest items that I've talked about before. So it's like a subset of the main story, which
Sure, but
in 7C this is more not the main story, but like uh how you progress instead of secondary progression.
Right. It's your primary way to grow as a character versus, hey, I killed four goblins. Oh, here's 4,000 experience. I don't know what goblins are anymore, but here's 80 experience points.
I don't
It's
use
like, oh,
XP, I use milestones, so
yeah.
I don't know either.
No, and my 5e group uses XP. So we get
Um,
XP allocated for various, and it's not just combat, but for solving puzzles and for beating challenges and that kind of stuff.
right, right.
But this gives you that kind of growth. The other thing that's very different from 7C is that you and your GM negotiate how you wish your character to leave the story. How will you shuffle off your mortal coil and die?
Which we haven't even done.
Which we haven't done because we're playtesting a module and I have no interest in killing any of you yet. Um, but the currencies. Let's go back and talk about the currencies. Heroes have hero points,
Yep.
and they have abilities. Their virtue can activate hero points. They can use hero points to reroll dice or to give themselves extra six raises. Um, you
To
can give
give a hero
another
point,
hero. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, you can give a hero point so another hero gets to. So you can spend one hero point for one extra die for you, or for three extra dice for somebody else. So it encourages that team play in a way that like 5e certainly doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you spend those hero points, they just go back into the pool. You gain them by incurring your hubris. GMs, I freely award hero points for excellent role play or snazzy quips or amazing plans. They reset every session, so it is a use or lose kind of resource. So there's no point in hoarding. I gotta hoard all these hero points until the last half hour of the session. No, no, just spend them. Um, the GM can actually buy unused dice or give a hero. So if we're negotiating and it's like, yeah, um, go ahead. Here's the scene. You're at a fancy party. There's a couple. They just got engaged. We're celebrating their nuptials, and if one of the players goes, I'm gonna get wicked drunk and make an ass of myself. It's like, that's really gonna ruin my story. I'm thinking this in my head. I'd like you not to do that. And here's a hero point. And of course, now everyone at the table kind of knows, oh, we've got to let this party run its course, or there's something here that we need to pay attention to. You pull away a little bit of the mystery, um, but now that player has a reward. The
Yeah,
GM,
it's a lot of negotiating with the GM, I think,
yes,
which
absolutely.
is it's kind of both a pro and a con for me, I think. Yeah, I don't know, I'm torn on it a little bit.
No, and that's, I mean, it, the thing our group is having, I'm not good at as a GM, and I need to learn to do this better, is to give you guys more space for RP. Like,
Right,
and to kind of give you better boundaries for, okay, this is what's happening. Here's kind of the space for RP. This is kind of what's going to happen. It's a little bit of kind of pulling back the curtain because, like, this is what's happening at the party and this is what people are kind of doing. What would you like to do while this is happening? You're kind of like, well, if I don't do anything, what's going to happen?
right.
And it's like, well, that I can't tell you, but if you don't, I mean, if you don't do anything, right? Theoretically, the villains are going to finish their schemes, and we haven't talked about that yet either.
The only
Um,
thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
to do nothing, right? And that's one of the other things we didn't talk about with character creation is there's no alignment in 7th C. All the heroes are heroes. You are good guys. You are
Well,
Indigo Montoya. You are
new. yeah, it's something good, right? Because
Right.
some people are
If
more chaotic good, and some people are more lawful good.
Yeah, but if you take an evil act, you will get corruption points, and you have to start making corruption rolls. Uh, if you fail a corruption roll, one, if you fail one corruption roll, you are now an NPC villain, and your character sheet goes to the GM.
Which is a pretty cool way of saying you literally can't be a murder hobo, or I get your character.
I get your character, and then it's like, let's say Joseph got corrupted and you failed. It's not going to happen because you're playing the character brilliantly. But let's
Yeah,
just say,
he's a good
right,
dude.
if you went bad, right, I'm going to torture this guy. It's like, if you torture that guy, you're going to take corruption, and you have to warn the GM. Is the rules on corruption are very clear. You have to warn the player before the thing happens in game. Once it happens, they get corruption and they make a roll. But let's say, right, Joseph did this. Well, he now becomes a villain for me. He's already started to learn about Donatilla and Paolo and their workings, and now he's like, "Yep, I tortured that guy." And yeah, the maestro, he's a drunk. I used to think he's an honorable man, but he's just a drunk jerk. Let's take him for all the money he's worth. And now that character, that villain NPC, knows a lot about what the other players know about and can
Yep.
use it to their
Oh,
disadvantage.
that'd be so bad.
So the GM has here. So we talked about corruption. The GM has danger points, right? And those are basically hero points for villains.
Yep.
And there are set rules for how the GM can spend those danger points. The only way you can kill a character in 7th C is the character has to be wounded to the point of incapacitated and have no hero points left to spend, and the villain has to be present, and the GM has to spend a danger point. Now, you could architect a scenario where all of that stuff comes to fruition, but it's very different than, oh, hey, that ogre hit you. Let me roll some dice. Oh, hey, that ogre did 12 points of damage. You only have 7 hit points. Well, I guess you're dead.
Yep.
Right? It's a very different um,
It
way to handle the character growth, progression, and death. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did an episode on character death, but
Yeah.
and you mentioned 7C back then, but I get what you're talking about now. Um, and sticking with the theme of 7C being a cinematic role-playing game, it makes sense to think that you wouldn't be defeated by a couple of goons. Kuzco and Kronk defeat the shape-changing guards. Um,
Pacha and Cuzco.
yes, yep,
Yeah.
my bad.
No, you're fine.
Um, But
Right.
uh,
But
but
yeah,
yeah, you don't have to worry about it so much. So if you've got players, if you're in your session 0 and you're talking about what system to play, and you've got players who are, I'd really like to make a character who is a hero, but I really don't want my character to die. You can do that in 5e, but it takes a lot of the risk out without compensating in any way. And in
sure.
7C, you can do that and still have brute squads and non-villain enemies have a negative impact without players ever being afraid of being, murdered in their sleep.
Right. I mean, let's go back to Pirates of the Caribbean, right? And Will and what's her face? Um,
Oh gosh.
yeah, Keira Knightley.
Yep.
Um, they're having, right. Hey,
Elizabeth
this Elizabeth. So Will and
Swan.
Elizabeth are under. They're in the lower decks of the ship, and he's bandaging her hand where Barbossa cut it, and they're talking about the medallion, right? And then of course the Black Pearl and the Cursed Pirates are shooting at the ship, and during the battle, Will rushes down and grabs the right. He's got to find the medallion, but the hold is filling with water and the ship is sinking. And finally, right, they light the powder magazine on fire, and Boom! And of course, Elizabeth runs to the rail. Will, because right, Will's on the ship.
Yep.
He should be dead.
Dead.
And
But he's not.
if Will Turner dies,
Spoiler alerts for a
right?
12-year-old movie.
Yeah, sorry, Pirates of the Caribbean spoiler alerts. But if he dies there, what happens to his story? What happens to their story, right? Because Pirates of the Caribbean, right? It's the story of Captain Jack Sparrow and Elizabeth Swann and Will Turner, right? The first movie is all those three characters are the primary, right? And Barbossa is the villain.
Mm-hmm.
So what would happen if one of the main characters died? Now, sure, there are lots of media, right? I'm looking at you, George R. R. Martin, and if I see you again, I'm going to kick you again. Where people just right, hey, that Ned Stark guy, he's pretty cool. Oh, he's dead. Hey, that guy's he's a jerk. Oh, hey, I don't have to worry about him. He's dead, right? If you look at Game of Thrones, right, you're like, oh, that's Jon Snow's story. Maybe not, right? Oh, it's Tyrion Lannister's story, and I think he's one of the ones that actually, spoiler alert again for Game of Thrones, right? Tyrion Lannister is one of the ones that lasts the longest. Um, but that's yeah, you are a character in a cinematic story. It's your story. You're the hero. You're not going to check out because oh, that random pirate 7 hit you with a bottle and now you're dead.
Right.
Right. But it's not as artificial as I'm thinking now of Austin Powers, right? When his dad's on the submarine, it's like, do you know who I am? You don't even have a name tag. Why don't you just lay down?
I mean, with enough raises, that could probably happen.
I mean, with if you got enough raises in panache and intimidate, yeah, you could totally pull that. It's like, here's 5 raises.
Why don't you just lay it down?
It's a strength 5 brute squad, and I have panache and intimidate, and I've got 7 raises. Hey fellas, do you know who I am? Do you see how sharp my sword is? I think you should just put those clubs down and go home to your wives, because if we fight, you're not going to make it out of here alive. And 7 raises. They all look at each other and drop their stuff and run. I mean, it's
Nice.
yeah, you could totally do that.
Very
Absolutely.
cool.
Absolutely. So, I was going to move on to villains. But do you have a
Okay.
question?
No, go ahead.
So the other thing that's interesting about 7th Sea is you're setting these scenes for the players in the back behind the screen. As the GM, I have villains, right? In our current story, there are 3. The party has identified 1 for sure. I think you've identified the second, the second one.
Yep.
And you're still kind of looking for
It's
the
the lady.
third. Okay. I'm not going to spoil that for you.
All
But
right.
villains have a strength, which is kind of their physical prowess. If you fight a villain, if a villain has a high strength and you're fighting them physically, they're going to be a challenging fight, right? The big German guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? When they're fighting around the airplane, that's a villain with a high physical strength. His strength value is very high. His influence is the number for how influential you are in the society, how much money you have, how many favors other people owe you. So you have these 2 values for a villain, and that's it. They don't get other stats, right?
Mm-hmm.
NPC stats don't exist in 7C. Uh, the
Okay.
villain has 2 stats: strength and influence. All of your other faceless mooks, your bandits, your pirates, your robbers, your town guards,
Yep.
they are called a brute squad, and they basically, one raise takes 1 brute out of the fight, whether it's I cut him and he's wounded, or I killed him, or I ran him off. So if you have a brute squad that is strength 7, you need 7 raises with some kind of physical approach to defeat them. And that's it. There's no hit dice. There's no hit points. There's no armor class. It's just I have a there's a band of pirates on that ship. It's a strength 10 brute squad. I need 10 raises to beat them up and make them go away. And with the villain, you get these 2 strength and influence. Now, a villain also has a set of schemes. So I've given my villains a set number of schemes that they're trying to accomplish while the party is telling is seeing the story from their side. So
Mm-hmm.
Donna, you guys know that Donatilla, she's a villain. She's a bully. She runs a boarding. She's the house mom for a boarding school. She's collecting secrets on the students and using that to try and blackmail the parents to make some money. Um, she's she's bamboozled Captain Tiffany into marrying her, and she's going to use that to her advantage. So a villain invests their influence in schemes. So she invested, I'm not going to tell you the number because then you could work out how powerful she is, but
Yeah.
she invested a set number of influence points in the blackmail scheme.
Okay.
Now, you guys forwarded it. You found the letters. You realized that they were bad. You showed the proper authorities, and you told some of the families, or you checked out some of the families and made sure that they were okay. The scheme totally foiled. She loses those influence points that she invested. She's invested some influence points in getting Captain Tiffany to marry her. If she gets married, she wins and she gains double the number of points she invested. And now she becomes more, right? Because she's married
Yep.
to an upstanding naval officer. That's going to give her an avenue to do more bad
It'd be
things to
harder for us to
you
take her
guys.
out.
It will be. Now, if you ruin the wedding, I'm not telling you to wreck the poor lady's wedding, but if you ruin the wedding, she doesn't get that and she becomes less powerful. When the villain's influence drops to zero, they become a brute or they leave the story,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just like if their strength drops to zero, they are dispatched, whether that's killed or rendered unconscious and captured and thrown in jail. So that's another thing that's really different in 7th Sea that I really, really like is that it's not, hey, I'm Strahd and I'm in my castle and, come on, walk through some of my traps and see if you can beat me up at the end in my throne room. Hooray. Right. And I've got all these cool
Right.
abilities I'll throw at you. It's like, no, if you were Strahd in your castle, you're not just going to sit in it's not a game of boss monster where I'm just sitting at the end, right? Wait,
Right.
right? And I know MMOs have that kind of feel, right? Oh, you are not prepared. I'm Illidan. Come beat me up. But in 7th Sea, your villains are thinking, feeling, acting people. They're almost players, and I mean, they don't have all the stats, but they're doing things and they're trying to make things happen, and they have goals. Now they're bad goals, right? Then there's a whole section in the core rulebook about how to architect a good villain and how a villain may be doing the wrong thing for the right reason, or the villain might be doing the right thing for the wrong reason, or a villain might be just one of those ends ways means. The end justifies the means. So it's
Yep.
okay that I'm sinking ships and hurting people and making the merchants of my town poor because right there's one merchant who wronged my family and I'm going to make sure he goes out of business. Well, you're crushing the town and killing people. Yeah, it doesn't matter as long as he suffers. It's worth it. It's like you're that's villainy,
Yep.
and it's up to the party to stop that. And that's so much more fun from a GM perspective. Is that I've got Donatilla and I've got these other two, and they're doing things and they're working on stuff and I'm keeping notes. I have a whole separate set of notes for what the villains are doing just to make sure because time is happening, right? The you guys have 28 days before um, the pirates raid the city,
Yep.
right?
Which we're gonna stop.
You're gonna stop. I know you guys are. It's great to see how you're gonna do it. I know you're gonna do it. Um, and again, it's cinematic, so you could do it at 27 days, 10 minutes. Like the pirate ship is sailing in, and the first salvo of cannons go off, and you'll do something to stop the attack. Like we'll run up this flag, or
We'll
we'll
do.
find we'll figure out what that mirror does,
Yep.
and use its power to do something. Um, and it's just very yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's and I know I keep gushing on about this system, but um, it is
No, that's okay.
yeah,
I think we've definitely talked about what we love about it, the fast pacedness, the driving of the narrative without losing gameplay. I think we touched on that briefly, but in 5e you can do the same thing narratively, right? You can have the players, you know, you guys are level 8, I'm not going to have you roll to beat the goblins. You stroll in, subjugate the goblin village, and are in the meeting hall talking to the king. But you lose gameplay by doing that. So you don't lose gameplay in 7C by speeding up their narrative. And whatever gameplay you do have is, and I don't mean this poorly, but the gameplay is relatively simple. I think. Instead of having, I've got a roll to attack and I have to add my strength modifier and my proficiency bonus because I'm proficient with a longsword, and it's a
right,
+1 longsword, and I got a bardic inspiration die last turn. So, you add up all of these things just to find out if you hit, and then you do the same thing for your damage.
right.
And again, I like that at times. I also have been really enjoying 7C, but the 7C gameplay is simpler in the D10 system. The theme is pretty great. We've talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah,
Um, the cinematic nature makes it, we've said it kind of ad nauseum already, but it makes it like a movie. So instead of thinking about things in terms of 6-second intervals, you can think about the 5-minute scene in the movie, and time passes faster. So we've got the 28 days to before the pirates will attack the place and kill the baddies, and we're trying to stop that. And so my plan is to have that happen much quicker. But 2 weeks in my D&D game can take 2 months in real time.
in real time. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we had a 4-hour session that was just about real time. They played from, it was a day that they started at 7:30, and we ended that session 4 hours later, and it was like 11:30 a.m. So
And I've had a 3 hour real time session, that was about 15 minutes worth of combat.
yep, been there too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the
the whole night Monday was one fight, and it was roughly 15 minutes in game. Um,
I
and
had
again, that's not bad. Um,
it's just
and the
different.
outcomes are different, right? There's more risk. There was more risk, and there was more meaningful decisions in that 3 hours of gameplay, than anything we've done in Seventh Sea, because my neutral evil character is starting to think in the back of her mind, like, I'm losing this fight. When do I cast invisibility and slink away and let the and get away from these bad guys? Because I'm below a quarter of my. I have 25% of my hit points left. I think that's where I'm pulling this trigger, and that's fun and it's challenging. But the roll for initiative, roll to hit, roll for damage, to hit, roll for damage, roll. It gets repetitive for me.
Mm.
Um,
We had, and I learned an important lesson from this, to not have too many moving parts in an encounter, and I think I talked about it on the show, but the encounter at the end of the campaign that I had been the first arc of that campaign where they were on the volcano, um, we played for 4 or 4.5 hours, and we made it through literally 60 seconds of the fight.
wow.
Um, yeah. And there was some shenanigans that episode too, with uh, like some players uh, being very tactical, um, and it was fun. I think everybody still had fun,
Yeah.
but it certainly wasn't the driving cinematic pacing that 7th Sea
Right.
is.
Yeah. No, and if you watch some of John Wick's videos on YouTube, he actually has an egg timer during combat.
Interesting.
So initiative is whoever has the most raises, they can act first, but the party can actually negotiate who acts first, um, depending on people's approaches and how they're doing things.
Hmm.
But he does when he's GMing, if you're in combat, when it's time to spend your raises, you better know what you want to do.
Right.
Or else he flips the timer. It's like, no, this is action. What are you gonna do? Like you already know what your approach is. Aim and finesse. You've got your pistol out, you're gonna shoot something. What are you shooting? Well, how far and I think that's where 5e slows down. It's like, well, how far away am I and what do I have line of sight to? And what and you start to worry about those little fiddly bits, right? The mechanical crunch of you know miniatures on graph, or if you're playing on Roll20, right, graph the grid and arrows and that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, you got your pistol out, you're gonna shoot. Well, I'm gonna shoot the chain that's holding the candelabra, and I'm gonna drop the candelabra on three uh, goons. Okay, three raises. Okay, you do it. Boom, bang. You hit the chandelier. Right. There's no roll. Do I hit it? No. You spent the three raises to take out um, the three brutes, and with
Hmm.
something with that kind of dramatic flair, here's a hero point. Right. That's just awesome.
And you said it earlier too that the successes in 7th Sea are called raises,
They are called
and
raises. Yeah.
that you roll for your raises when you take a risk, but the risk being the attempt of doing something. Dropping a candelabra and killing 3 people is riskier in D&D. You have a higher chance to fail than you do in 7th Sea.
Yeah, because you would have to shoot the object and you'd have to do enough damage to the object to make it fall. And then you'd have to work out the crush damage or the blunt damage of a falling metal chandelier on top of three guards, right?
Yeah,
Three
yeah.
human
I mean,
guards.
it falls 20 feet, so it's 2d6 bludgeoning
Right.
plus I'll give a size modifier, so 2d8 bludgeoning to each of
Yep.
them. It's not
And then
I like 5e for that, for the risk that it has in the simple things and the chance to fail. And
yeah.
it's not adrenaline chasing, but there's no 20 and 1 moments in 7th Sea. Um,
So so
it all feels heroic. It never
it
is like, oh, that feels really bad.
right. And I think I like that. I mean, and in D&D in 5e, you would never. I'm going to try and. I mean, it would be a very creative, risky player to shoot the chain holding the chandelier to try and take out three guards. Right?
I
You
don't
would
know.
never do that. If
You
you're
you
playing
you
a
totally would.
well, I don't know. If you're playing a gunslinger and you've rolled initiative and you know where you are on the initiative track and you're facing off against five guards, I don't, maybe this is just me as a 5e player, but I'm like, okay, which guard am I going to shoot? Well, the warlock who
Yeah, are
went
you not
went
being
ahead
as
of me.
creative as you could be?
I think I'm not because the risk the reward isn't worth the risk, right? If I do the snazzy shoot the chain, drop the chandelier on three guards in 5e, what do I get?
A
Experience
total
point?
of 6d8 damage as opposed to the 1d8 that your crossbow does.
1d10 for my firearm, but because I'm a
Sure.
gunslinger.
Yep.
But it's like, but yeah, okay, so I get a little bit of a damage bonus, but it's not really the milieu. It's right. It's not that's not kind of how a 5e group traditionally plays. And maybe that's just my group.
Yeah, I think
Um,
so. Like especially the guys on like There Will Be Dungeons are using all sorts of environment. Like I'm gonna just push the guy off the tower because he's gonna fall. Like okay, it's a shove.
right.
Or we're gonna jump off the tower and I'm gonna feather fall us, and then will use a scroll of reverse gravity to get back up on the tower once these other guys fall off. Like there's a lot of really creative stuff, I
Okay.
think.
Man, then I mean maybe I've just been so
Creativity is system agnostic. So,
it is, but I think some systems encourage it more than others.
I mean, you make it
Yeah.
easier, right? So
Yeah.
you play 7C because you want to feel successful and heroic, and it
Right.
always feels good. But if you want something that you've got, the chance to fail at, that bit of danger that's more dangerous than what you find in 7C, then you've got other systems to
Sure.
play.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot of my character deaths in 5e. I remember those 20 moments. Like I'm not a big I guess I don't fixate on the one moments, the botches or the crit misses. Um as much as I do on the when I rolled the 20. Like, oh, I'm gonna seduce the Yuan Ti and totally derail Tomb of Annihilation. Nat 20. Hey, look what I did. Um I remember that, and probably remember that for a long, long time. Um, but the fails, like, oh yeah, it took us like forever to fight that guy, or oh yeah, that's when my steps on tails, my Tabaxi monk, he got killed, and I don't really, I remember the fight, but I don't remember the role, and I don't remember. It's like he just got, he got overwhelmed with orcs, and he died. It's like okay. Um, and I think that's what puts 7C right at the top for me is that it really it brings those 20 moments. They happen more frequently,
Yeah, I mean every raise is a 20 basically.
basically. Yeah. And if you have 10, if you have 7 to 9 raises to throw at something amazing is going to happen, right?
hmm
You know.
Um, yeah, so I don't love that there isn't as much risk, and maybe it's just because we've rolled well. But we keep going back to the Princess Bride. Wesley gets knocked out and tortured and almost dies.
He does. Yeah.
Um, and we
Now,
just haven't had any. We have had the most dangerous pirates in the sea didn't hurt us, and we caused a little upstart at a party, and nothing happened, and we snuck a
mm,
woman out of the courts that she was in, and nothing happened. So there's just not a lot of badness going on.
so I think what's happening because the villains are definitely working to counter what you're doing.
Right, but they're
Um,
not doing anything. They're just working on it.
they're working on it, and I think this is kind of my like again we're going to go back to movie, right? This is the first act. We're establishing things. Who's who in the zoo, and what are their roles, and how are they connected? I think this party I meant to be kind of a turning point for you guys. You've got your mission, you know what you need to do, and now, um, like think of the movie Die Hard, right?
hmm
Um, there's a lot of him walking around in the stairwell, and a lot of him crawling around in the vents, and a lot of him. There's a lot of time when John McClane isn't shooting bad guys. Um,
Right, but the
he's
bad guys are kicking in people and setting
and
up badness.
Sure, and that's been happening. It's just for you guys, it's happening off camera.
All right.
So
I
so
want to
when
see more bad things, I
well,
guess.
it's coming, right? Because the bad guys are gonna just be about done with your shenanigans here,
Well, good.
and I think this wedding is gonna be the perfect catalyst for some of those things.
Yeah. Are there things that you don't like about it, or should I just go into the things I don't like about it?
So some of the stuff I don't like about it is it's very hard to write a module,
Yep.
right?
Yep,
Um,
it is.
it is, and like I said, I'm trying to write a module for 7C, and I've read some of the modules for 7C, um, but it's very hard to write a common story. You've got all your PCs, they've got a bunch of different personal stories they're all trying to work at. And as a GM, right, that's one of the reasons why for our playtest I said no personal stories, um,
Right.
because then I'm trying to tell a story. I'm trying to help people through the plot of my module, and no, I have to sail to the Crescent City and ride a camel because that's in my story. It's like, okay, great, we'll do a side quest for you, and derail the story. So that's one thing. Um, I think the other thing is that, and you'll think this is kind of silly, it's very dense. There's a lot to take in. Like you can't pick up even the quick start guide PDF is how many pages? What, 50?
What? Gosh, no, it's like
Is
13.
it 13?
It's like
Um,
not a lot.
okay, but it just feels like there's all these countries and all these nationalities, and there's the church and all this stuff. So that's one of the downsides, I think, with Seventh Sea, is that it's so massive that for new players it looks unapproachable, right?
37 pages.
37 pages. Um, so
It's
there's
less unapproachable than 5e though. Again,
really
yeah, no, 7c
okay.
is shallower. That's I know there's a lot of negative connotation around that, so I don't want to say shallower and mean it in a bad way, but
Did
there is
you mean?
more 5e canon than there is 7e or
Oh yeah.
7c.
Well, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
So
with
you've got,
the
9 countries that resemble real world countries, and it's a sort of resemblant map geographically as well. So it's easy to latch onto pretty quickly, and and
the
yeah, you've got secret societies and orders and sorceress magics and whatever else, but you haven't got continents worth of places and hundreds of thousands of notable characters to learn. And
and races and classes, right? There's no classes. Everyone's a
yeah,
human.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely
no.
easier to get into, which is one of the things I would call a pro going for it. Is, if you really just want to get into a roleplay game, yeah, there are quick start things for 5e, but the quick start for 7c is even quicker. um, and if you are quick starting, you don't lose a lot of depth because you're not reading all of that other stuff. So
No, you just make a couple of characters and then you pick, Man in the Iron Mask, Pirates of the Caribbean, like pick a movie and put yourself, on Tortuga.
right. Um,
So what don't you like about Seven Sea? I've gushed for how long? An hour and a half now.
yeah, just
Um,
about.
what don't you like about Seven Sea?
Well, I already mentioned that I was kind of mixed on the non-static roles, where you don't really know if your raises are enough to do what you want to do or not, and how everything is a bit of a negotiation. I don't get the satisfaction of, all right, I'm gonna run to the end of the hall and push the guy out the window immediately because I don't know if I can do that or not. I assume that I can, and we already sort of covered this, but it is a little bit less certain. I can be mechanically a little less confident in my capabilities at any given moment.
Okay.
Um, and my other sort of negative to tag along with that is that you may narrate a great scene. I've got, all right, I've got 4 raises, terrific, I'm going to narrate a great scene where I murder this guy, and it's like, well, you'd need 5 raises to do all of that. So um, which is not terrible, but those are sort of the things that I don't like about it. um, and being a tabletop role playing game, and it's so tricky. I have recently prototyped out a board game idea, and I've play tested it twice, and it would be so good for a video game, and D&D or like any tabletop role playing game would make a terrific video game. If you've seen this stuff for like Baldur's Gate 3, which is comical but looks amazing, that transferring a tabletop role-playing game into a video game is uh, lofty, and so there are times where I feel like 7th Sea would be maybe maybe better as a video game because I want those sort of mechanical things that I can look at and say, okay, well, I know I can do this, 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 and this. And I know that if I roll less than a 15, I definitely can't do that. Um, and so I I don't know. I struggle critiquing it for not being video gamey enough because it's not a video game. But I've been spending a lot of time lately thinking about reconciling those two differently and what makes them what they are for the platform that they're on. And so
See,
seven.
and that's and that kind of uncertainty, I want to do this. Okay, you need 5 raises. I only rolled 4. Um, and we talked about this a little bit with the secret door and the worn tapestry, right?
Yep.
Where in 5e it's no, right? It's binary. I did it or I didn't do it.
Well, see again, it's DM discretion though.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Like,
so to a
yes,
point,
the
right?
effect is binary, right? But it's the same thing in 7C, where you don't see the door, but you might find evidence that suggests that it's there. So you didn't roll a 10, you didn't see it, but a 5 is good enough to notice that there are footprints in the dust that seem to like some people are walking up and away from this tapestry all the time. What's so special about this?
Right.
So I
And
think it's just how you run it.
I think, yeah, but again, Seventh Sea is architected, is the game mechanics are designed in such a way that if you can't, it's almost not DM dependent at that point. Like if you get a DM who's black and white, hey, you're supposed to roll perception, roll perception. Okay, I roll perception. Oh, you don't perceive anything.
Yeah, but no,
Okay.
it's you wouldn't keep playing in that game. Like that wouldn't be fun
Well,
if it was
you
just
just turn. I
flat
mean,
like that.
as a party, you just turn around and go do something else, right? And it could potentially derail the narrative. It could put the plot in a different place. Like, hey, the Whomping Willow is beating the crap out of us. Oh, okay, well, I'm gonna roll perception to see if there's a way to hide under the tree. Oh, you failed. Okay, well, the tree's gonna keep beating you up. Well, I can stay here and get beat to shreds by the Whomping Willow, or I can run away and then not chase Peter Pettigrew down the hallway in the end of, I forget which Harry Potter movie that is, but you
The
see what
the
I'm
the
saying?
third.
That's, yeah,
Um,
Prisoner of Azkaban.
yeah.
But
So in that scene, right? In that
right,
scene, if it was 7C, it would be 2 raises to dodge a couple of the hits from the willow and to dive underneath.
right,
In 5e, you would make an athletics or acrobatics check to dodge the first Whomping Willow strike,
sure.
and they pass the first one, they duck under it, and then you'd make another one, and you fail that one, so Hermione gets whacked and Harry loses his glasses, and then they make a third one and they succeed, so they dive under. Like you still, it's just slower.
It's slower. I think that's what it is it's slower, and we talked about risk, right? I think the risk is that you could derail the story, right? If you rolled poorly enough, like, oh, you got hit by the tree. Oh, you got hit by the tree again. Oh, you got hit by the tree the third time, make a death save. It's like, oh, I'm gonna die here and not learn anything interesting about the story.
Yes, you will
Which
die at the tree, which
which
is
again is a
hilarious and meaningful.
and can be hilarious and meaningful. Like, oh, you remember that time when we couldn't even make it past the tree? Oh yeah, that was cool. And then
Right, right.
we had to
The
start the story again, or we had to start the. Um, I think
But why
that's,
would you
yeah.
start over? You would just start with some of their classmates who followed them out to the tree and who watched them get beat to a pulp, and now you're at the tree again. And these
And
classmates saw the pattern, so they dive in, and you keep going right from there.
yeah, I guess. Yeah, I suppose.
I just think it's how you run it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that you want less interrupting of the story that you're trying to convey, which I totally get because my first campaign that I ran with my 5e group took us 2 years, and it was we fast traveled through maybe a month of time, maybe a month and a half, so it was close to 4 months of actual time where that would have been 4 to 7 months total for what we did in 2 years in 7C. So I think it is. Do you really want to tell the story that you want to tell? Because 7C is better for that. You want your
yeah,
characters, you want your players to get through the story. You want them to be heroic, and you want them to see everything that you've written and prepped. Whereas in 5e Pathfinder, Starfinder, etc., you as the DM, and I'm learning this more and more, have to be a little bit more flexible in what you're trying to do. So maybe there is something that you really want your players to see or get or do, and they keep sort of getting caught into bar fights, and now they're arrested, so they got out of prison, and now they're going to go try to find money so they can get new magic items, and um, it just takes longer to do those things without as much nudging and shuffling and
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, I get that. I get that. I mean, I play both systems. I'm not anti 5e.
No, no,
I
not at all. I'm just helping illustrate some of the differences
yeah,
and how a newer DM who's trying to decide, well, what system do I play, how something might play out in one of these versus the other.
yeah,
Um, and
absolutely.
and I like going to 5e as the comparison because the most people know that, so
Sure.
you know what that is like. But if you've never heard of 7C before, now hopefully you know a little bit what 7C is like.
Go play it. It's awesome.
Yes. No, I mean try it, right? That's
Yeah.
the I wish and I from that Reddit post I was like, why wouldn't you this is literally a system designed around what you're trying to accomplish in 5e and you don't have to change a damn thing about it.
Right.
What's the hang up, man? And I think it's just popularity and availability, and everyone
Well,
has access to it. And
everybody already knows roll for initiative, roll to hit, roll for damage. I know
right,
what a
it's
longsword
familiar,
does. It is. It's familiar, and that's that whole and we saw that with Matt playing yesterday. The so what do I roll and when do I roll? It's like, well, I've set the scene and you figure out kind of how you're going to approach the scene, and that's when you roll. It's like, well, I don't have to roll for this one specific task. No, no, no. We're gonna, if your approach is I'm gonna use finesse and perform to do some dancing to accomplish. I'm gonna outdance and be more graceful than anyone on the dance floor and shame the bride and groom so that they're mad at me, and maybe do something foolish. That's your approach. Like, you don't have to make a performance check for dancing or a notice check for this or a that check for that. I think that's what trips a lot of players up, is that the
right?
mechanics are way different, and the narrative can flow very easily from GM to player and back,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
like like Callie did. It's like, hey, you've got a bunch of raises. You're on the ship. Do you want to narrate something? Or you did. You found the shipwreck, right?
Yep. My raise
You
was to spot the shipwreck.
you spotted a shipwreck on the sail across the bay that no one had ever found before, and I didn't write a ship. There's no shipwreck in any of my notes, but you narrated it. And it was great. I'm on this bowsprit. I'm hanging off the rigging, and I spy a circle of birds, and I call for the captain to heave to port so we can check this thing out because we're way ahead of schedule. And the birds are circling a ship that has been victimized by pirates and it's sinking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
That
like,
was
okay,
fun.
great. Spend a couple of raises, you can get some wealth off that. And Callie spent a couple of raises, and instead of giving her just random wealth, I said, let's give them something cool. You found an emerald ring, and everyone's like, ooh, a ring. But none of that was any stuff that I had prepped. And I think that's one of the another thing with Seventh Sea, um, is that we talked about improv. As a GM, you have to be okay with going someplace you haven't prepped. Like we
Mm-hmm.
found a deserted sinking ship, and it's
Yeah.
like, cool, you found it. You have the raises. You tell me what's in there. And then Matt saw a shark. I want to see a shark. Cool. After everyone's done, kind of, because everyone had spent their raises successfully to get the stuff off the ship, right? All of your moving around on this sinking derelict has attracted the attention of a bull shark, and he's now circling your boat. It's like, wow, that's cool, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
was something cool that happened that I had, again, no prep for at all. Um,
I think that'll probably be like the last thing that I do really like about it is that it is more cooperate. There are less mechanics, but mechanically it's more cooperative than 5e is.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
But it's a lot of fun, and it's not difficult to learn. The quick start stuff is really concise and well done, easy to follow, and it's a lot of fun. Having fun with it. Looking forward to more.
Yeah, I can't wait till Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday yet? What are we? Critical Role now? No.
No,
Um,
not yet. But
yeah,
I'm excited to see what happens with the wedding. Like now that you've kind of gone through the engagement and you guys have a really good solid idea of what's happening, right? You're
hmm.
gonna get the feedback from the father, from the estranged daughter, right? The estranged daughter has sent her father a letter. He started to read it. He saw the earring that she gave you to prove it was from her, and his his eyes filled with tears. That's kind of where we end it. I always like to end Seventh Sea on a cliffhanger, right? Um, so
What GM doesn't?
doesn't, right? And it's so easy. It's like this is the end of the scene, and we're in the transition between scenes. You're gonna talk to the basically the quest giver, for lack of a better term,
Sure.
and get your next set of quests, and and we'll see what happens. It will be exciting, and yes, I thought you were going to insult the bridegroom to the point where he would duel you. I was all set for that. I even started kind of sketching out.
Oh no,
Um,
I'm gonna schmooze.
and you're like, I'm just gonna schmooze him, and it's like, oh, come on! You know she's bad. You know she's gonna use him if she gets her hooks into him. What do you do?
Yeah, all in time, all in
I,
time.
I know, and it's. I mean, again, we like we talked about with the Die Hard movie. There's a lot of time spent, kind of going along to get along. Like Wesley and Buttercup spend a lot of time kind of wandering around, right?
Yep.
And she doesn't know it's Wesley. She thinks it's the Dread Pirate Roberts, and then she shoves him down the hill, and then she follows him down the hill, right?
Hmm.
There's an example of you don't have enough raises. Oh, we want to have enough raises to get away from the bad guys. It's like, you don't have enough raises for that, but you could, fall down the hill, take a few wounds, and wind up in the fire swamp, and then they can't follow you right down the hill. It's like, I'll burn,
All right.
I'll burn three raises for that. You needed seven to get rid of them. You only have three. If you take two wounds falling down the hill, and now you're in the fire swamp, and it's going to take them half a day to walk to ride around the ridge. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right. So
Um, do you have
we're running out of time,
any
aren't we?
closing thoughts?
Yeah. Closing thoughts. I mean, I could talk seven. I could talk more Seventh Sea.
I know
Um,
you could, but
I could, but I sure do need some closing thoughts, don't I?
well, you don't
I'm
need
gonna
them, but you're welcome to them.
I think it's definitely a system everybody should check out. It's one of those systems that you should like D&D. Everyone should play D&D, right? Everyone should play 5e. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Everyone should play either 5e or Pathfinder Second
Everyone should
Edition.
play 5e. Don't play Pathfinder. Or do, but
Everybody
also play 5e.
everybody should try out Starfinder. Starfinder is another one that's really good.
Yeah, that one's actually pretty cool.
Fiasco is fun and light, and everybody should give that a shot just once, just to show that either you like cooperative storytelling or you don't.
It's just too light.
And yeah, no, but you've tried it, right? You tried it once, and you're like,
well,
nope, this is too.
We looked at the rulebook once. Did we play?
Once. Yeah, you guys left me.
I don't remember.
An invalid. Oh yeah, so
nope. It wasn't memorable enough.
Yeah, but you left me in a nursing home and with severe Alzheimer's, and you sold my farm out from under me, and then you went to jail because you were buying drugs with that money. And yeah, you wound up in jail. I wound up in a nursing home. I think Matt was the only one that had a positive outcome, and he got a house in the suburbs, but was riddled with guilt and had to take like Ambien or Ritalin for the rest of his life.
All right.
They're dark stories, right? They're dark humor stories for most of Fiasco. But yeah, we played it once, but it wasn't. We didn't love it. Nobody loved it. But
so
yeah,
7th Sea.
7th Sea is definitely something you should play, right? It's right up there. You know, it's one of those off systems that people talk about. Give it a shot. Again, it's not everyone's cup of tea because it does kind of lack that risk. Like, oh, I could die at any minute. Not really, no. But you're going to see the end of the movie. You're going to make it to the end of the movie and have some kind of conclusion.
Yep.
Right. And hopefully the conclusion will be memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would echo that. Do try it. Don't expect it to be 5e because it's not.
Oh, it's not. Nope.
Yeah. Make a movie in a role playing game. So that's gonna do it, man. Yeah, it did turn out to be a beefy episode, but that's all right. We knew
that going into it.
Yes, I mean I can't bring up 7th Sea without you going on. So,
yeah.
But that is gonna do it. Set the Table episode 15. If you would like to comment on the show, ask a question to be answered about your favorite role-playing game. If you have any questions about 7th Sea or you want to hear us talk about it a little bit more, feel free to tweet either at jmscoda5 or at redhoodiegames. And YouTube listeners can post a comment there. And if you'd like to support us with anything more than just a listen, head on over to patreon.com/Skoda and give that a scope. But that is going to do it, and we will see you next time.
All right. Good day, eh?